don't pay a single penny in tax, making billions of dollars.
Why didn't you do it
Billions of dollars.
Because Obama.
Because you, in fact, passed that. That was your tax proposal.
I got it done, and you know what happened?
You got it done.
Our economy boomed. It's never boomed.
The economy is
Mr. President, let me pick up on that. You would continue your free market approach, lower taxes, more deregulation, correct?
not lower taxes for American people.
But in Obama's, you talk about the economy booming, it turns out that in Obama's final 3 years as president, more jobs were created, 1.5 million more jobs than in the first 3 years of your presidency.
They had the slowest recovery since economic recovery since 1929. It was the slowest recovery. Also, they took over something that was down here. All you had to do is turn on the lights and you pick up a lot. But they had the slowest economic recovery since 1929. Let me tell you about the stock market. When the stock market goes up, that means jobs. It also means 401ks. If you got in, if you ever became president with your ideas, you want to terminate my taxes, I'll tell you what, you lose half of the companies that have poured in here will leave, and plenty of companies that are already here, they'll leave for other places. They will leave, and you will have a depression, the likes of which you've never seen.
Look, we inherited the worst recession short of a depression in American history. I was asked to bring it back. We were able to have an economic recovery that created the jobs you're talking about. We handed him a booming economy. He blew it.
It wasn't booming. It wasn't booming. It was the weakest recovery since
Is it fair to say he blew it when it was record low unemployment before COVID?
Yeah, but because what he did, even before COVID, manufacturing went in the hole. Manufacturing went in the hole. It's number one. Number two. Number three.
They said it would take. No, you're number two.
No.
They said
He just keep cutting that nigga off.
to bring back manufacturing. I brought back 700,000 jobs. They brought back nothing. They gave up on manufacturing. Why did I stand it fair?
I'm the guy
He
that brought
totally
back
gave up on manufacturing.
We brought back, I was asked to bring back Chrysler and General Motors. We brought them back right here in the state of Ohio and Michigan.
Both of them crooked.
They're gone. He blew it. And in fact, they're gone.
Ohio had the best year it's ever had last year. Michigan had the best year they've
They
ever had.
they just exposing each other's business. That's all they doing.
Germany from China.
People gotta pay attention to that.
I just show you how he destroyed some of the
Yeah.
Mr. Vice President,
And so you take a look at what he's actually done. He's done very little. His trade deals are the same way. He talks about these great trade deals. You know, he talks about the art of the deal. China's perfected the art of the steal. We have a higher deficit with China now than we did before. We have the highest trade deficit
China
with
ate
Mexico.
your lunch, down 18%. China ate your lunch, Joe, and no wonder your son goes in and he takes out billions of dollars. Takes out billions of dollars to manage. He makes millions of dollars. And also, while we're at it, why is it? Just out of curiosity.
Oh, look. Just get him. Look.
Moscow's wife gave your son $3.5 million.
Look.
What did he do to deserve?
Look.
What did he do with Marissa to deserve $183,000?
question and an answer.
None of that is true.
Really?
Mr. President, please.
Totally discredited. Totally discredited. And by the way,
Well, wait, he didn't get $3.5 million, Joe?
Mr. Vice
He got $3.5 million.
Look.
Mr. President.
Oh.
Discussion, please.
It's a fact.
Well, there's raised an issue. Let's put Vice President answer.
discredited.
Look. He don't give a fuck what he talking about.
Joe, go on those
Experience
days.
and energy.
Mr. President.
Keep going, Joe.
Yeah. Look.
I think he did.
Mr. President. Let him answer.
He doesn't want to let me answer because he knows I have the truth. His position has been totally, thoroughly discredited by everybody. Well, by the media, by our allies, by the World Bank, by everyone as discredited. Matter of fact, even the people who testified under oath.
So let me ask you this.
Look, he would not let him talk.
People under
You got $3.5 million from Moscow.
he testified under oath in his administration said, I did my job and I did it very well. I did it
I don't know if they are.
I'll give you the list of the people who testified. Sure, you've already fired most of them because they did a good job.
Some people don't know.
Well, here's the
You get the final word.
well, it's hard to get any word in with this clown. Excuse me.
No. Mr. President.
$3.5 million.
That is simply.
Why did he deserve $3.5 billion from Moscow?
Look, here's the deal. We want to talk about families and ethics. I don't want to do that. I mean, his family we could talk about all night. His family's
My family lost a fortune by coming down and helping us with government. Every single one of them lost.
This is not about my family or his family. It's about your family.
The American
He doesn't. That's not true. He doesn't want to talk about what you need. You, the American people. It's about you. That's what
You got that motherfucker Trump fucked off. He fucked off, dude.
But yeah, but Trump telling snitch on his ass too.
Trump.
Can I be honest? It's a very important
No, the answer to the question is no.
Ukraine.
No, sir.
With $1 billion.
Look.
It's absolutely not true.
You're doing it.
You're going to have
True.
Gentlemen.
Keep it control.
It's my voice, but that's easy to be. Why should I be different than the two of you? So here's the data point. We have 6 segments. We have ended that segment. We're going to go to the next segment. In that segment, you each are going to have 2 uninterrupted moments. In those 2 uninterrupted minutes, Mr. President, you can
They need to put him on mute and cut their mics off.
Question about race, but if you want to answer about something else, go ahead. But I think that the country would be better served if we allowed both people to speak with fewer interruptions. I'm appealing to you, sir, to do
Look at Trump.
And him too.
well.
Like a little baby. I tell you, man. That nigga a baby, man. He a kid. Look, him
You
too.
gonna say him too?
He got my
You
toys.
gonna be?
He can't play with his toys.
Vice President Biden, you say that President Trump's response to the violence in Charlottesville 3 years ago, when he talked about very fine people on both sides, was what directly led you to launch this run for president.
I'm gonna put this shit on YouTube while niggas get some views like a motherfucker watch. Why we get paid off this shit?
Done more for Black Americans than any
Oh,
president,
we
with
getting
the
busy.
possible exception of Abraham Lincoln. My question for the two of you is, why should voters trust you rather than your opponent to deal with the race issues facing this country over the next 4 years? Vice President Biden, you go first.
It's about equity and equality. It's about decency. It's about the Constitution. And we have never walked away from trying to require equity for everyone, equality for the whole America. But we've never accomplished it. But we've never walked away from it like he has done. It is true. The reason I got in the race is when those people, close your eyes, remember what those people look like coming out of the fields carrying torches, their veins bulging, spewing, and just spewing anti-Semitic bile, and accompanied by the Ku Klux Klan. A young woman got killed. And they asked the president what he thought. He said there were very fine people on both sides. No president has ever said anything like that. Now, second point I make to you is that when Floyd was killed, when Mr. Floyd was killed, there was a peaceful protest in front of the White House. What did he do? He came out of his bunker, had the military use tear gas on him so he could walk across to a church and hold up a Bible. And then what happened after that? The bishop of that very church said that it was a disgrace. The general who was with him said all he ever wants to do is divide people, not unite people at all. This is a president who has used everything as a dog whistle to try to generate racist hatred, racist division. This is a man who, in fact, you talk about helping African Americans. 1 in 1,000 African Americans has been killed because of the coronavirus. And if he doesn't do something quickly, by the end of the year, 1 in 500 will have been killed. 1 in 500 African Americans. This man is a
Nigga, talk about the police brutality. That's what they need to be talking about.
This man's done virtually nothing. Look, the fact is that you have to look at what he talks about. You have to look at what he did. And what he did has been disastrous for the African American community.
So, President Trump, you have 2 minutes. Why should Americans trust you over your opponent to deal with race?
In a crime bill, 1994, where you call them super predators, African Americans, super predators.
Look. He snitched on both. Look. Yeah, he did.
It's just 2 minutes.
So you did that.
Watch.
And
Look.
you're a super predator, and I'm letting people out of jail now that you have treated the African American population community. You have treated the black community about as bad as anybody in this country. You did the 19, and that's why if you look at the polls, I'm doing better than any Republican has done in a long time because they saw what you did. You called them super predators, and you've called them worse than that because you look back at your testimony.
What's worse?
You've called them a lot worse than that as far as the church is concerned and as far as the generals are concerned. We just got the support of 250 military leaders and generals. Total support. Law enforcement, almost every law enforcement group in the United States. I have Florida, I have Texas, I have Ohio, I have, Portland. The sheriff just came out today and he said, I support President Trump. I don't think you have any law enforcement. You can't even say the word law enforcement because if you say those words, you're going to lose all of your radical left supporters. And why aren't you saying those words?
He said you can't even say it.
Law enforcement, because you know what? If they called us in Portland, we would put out that fire in a half an hour, but they won't do it because they're run by radical left Democrats. If you look at Chicago, if you look at any place you want to look, Seattle, they heard we were coming in the following day and they put up their hands and we got back Seattle. Minneapolis, we got it back, Joe, because we believe in law and order, but you don't. The top 10 cities and just about the top 40 cities are run by Democrats and in many cases radical left. And they've got you wrapped around their finger, Joe, to a point where you don't want to say anything about law and order. And I'll tell you what, the people of this country want and demand law and order, and you're afraid to even say it.
All right. I want to return to the question of race. Vice President Biden, after the grand jury in the Breonna Taylor case decided not to charge any of the police with homicide, you said it raises the question, quote, whether justice could be equally applied in America. Do you believe that there is a separate but unequal system of justice for blacks in this country?
Yes, there's systemic injustice in this country, in education and work and in law enforcement and the way in which it's enforced. But look, the vast majority of police officers are good, decent, honorable men and women. They risk their lives every day to take care of us. But there are some bad apples. And when they occur, when you find them, they have to be sorted out. They have to be held accountable. They have to be held accountable. And what I'm going to do as President of the United States is call together an entire group of people at the White House, well, everything from the civil rights groups to the police officers to the police chiefs, and we're going to work this out.
You ain't going to do shit. All this shit will talk.
We have more transparency in when these things happen. These cops aren't happy to see what happened to George Floyd. These cops aren't happy to see what happened to Breonna Taylor. Most don't like it. But we have to have a system where people are held accountable. And by the way,
it's that police code, that brotherhood. They ain't finna tell on each other because the bad cops are going to do them good cops in.
Violence is
The
never
bad cops will kill you.
That's what I'm saying.
When they run through the middle of the town and burn down your stores and kill people all over the place.
Look.
I'd like to continue with this, Grace. I promise we're going to get to the issue of law and order in a moment. This month, your administration directed federal agencies to end racial sensitivity training that addresses white privilege or critical race theory. Why did you decide to do that, to end racial sensitivity training? And do you believe that there is systemic racism in this country, sir?
I ended it because it's racist. I ended it because a lot of people were complaining that they were asked to do things that were absolutely insane, that it was a radical revolution that was taking place in our military, in our schools, all over the place, and you know it, and so does everybody else, and he would know it.
Racial sensitivity training.
If you were a certain person, you had no status in life. It was sort of a reversal. And if you look at the people, we were paying people hundreds of thousands of dollars to teach very bad ideas and frankly very sick ideas and really
Look at him. He telling on their ass too.
People to hate our country. And I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to allow that to happen. We have to go back to the core values of this country. They were teaching people that our country is a horrible place, it's a racist place, and they were teaching people that
it is. What the fuck is he talking about?
Nobody's doing that. He's racist. Here's the deal. I know a lot more about this.
Let him finish.
The fact is that there is racial insensitivity. People have to be made aware of what other people feel like, what insults them, what is demeaning to them. It's important that people know they don't want to. Many people don't want to hurt other people's feelings, but it makes a big difference. It makes a gigantic difference in the way a child is able to grow up and have a sense of self-esteem. It's a little bit like how this guy and his friends look down on so many people. They look down their nose on people like Irish Catholics like me and grew up in Scranton. They look down on people who don't have money. They look down on people who are of a different faith. They look down on people who are a different color. In fact, we're all Americans. The only way we're going to bring this country together is bring everybody together. There's nothing we cannot do if we do it together. We can take this on and we can defeat racism.
President Trump, sir.
During the Obama-Biden administration, there was hatred. You look at Ferguson, you go to very many places. Look at Oakland. Look what happened in Oakland. Look what happened in Baltimore. Look what happened. Frankly, it was more violent than what I'm even seeing now. But the reason
You know you're gonna say that.
the Democrats in some of these cities don't want to talk like you about law and order. You still haven't mentioned. Are you in favor of law and order?
I'm in favor of law. You follow.
Are you in favor of law and order? Go ahead,
Law and order with justice, where people get treated fairly. And the fact of the matter is, violent crime went down 17%, 15% in our administration. It's gone up on his watch.
Much more.
Mr. President, you're going to be very happy because we're now going to talk about law and order.
We have trouble. We're Democratic-run cities.
That's exactly my question. There has been a dramatic increase in homicides in America this summer particularly, and you often blame that on Democratic mayors and Democratic governors, but in fact there have been equivalent spikes in Republican-led cities like Tulsa and Fort Worth. So the question is this really a party issue?
I think it's a party issue. You can bring in a couple of examples, but if you look at Chicago, what's going on in Chicago, where 53 people were shot and 8 died shot. If you look at New York, where it's going up like nobody's ever seen anything, the numbers are going up 100, 150, 200%. Crime, it is crazy what's going on. And he doesn't want to say law and order because he can't, because he'll lose his radical left support.
He gonna dwell on that shit.
If he ever got to run this country and they ran it the way he would want to run it, we would have, our suburbs would be gone. By the way, our suburbs would be gone, and you would see problems like
He wouldn't know a suburb unless he took a wrong turn.
Oh, I know
He
suburbs.
would know. I was raised in the suburbs. This is not 1950. All these dog whistles and racism don't work anymore. Suburbs are by and large integrated. There's many people today driving their kids to soccer practice and or to black and white and Hispanic in the same car as there have been any time in the past. What really is a threat to the suburbs and their safety is his failure to deal with COVID. They're dying in the suburbs. His failure to deal with the environment. They're being flooded. They're being burned out because his refusal to do anything. That's why the suburbs are in trouble.
I do want to talk about this issue of law and order, though. And in the joint recommendation that came from the Biden-Bernie Sanders task force, you talked about, quote, reimagining policing. First of all, what does reimagining policing mean, and do you support? It means, if I might finish the question, what does reimagining policing mean, and do you support the Black Lives Matter call for community control of policing?
Look, what I support is the police having the opportunity to deal with the problems they face. And I'm not totally opposed to defunding the police officers. As a matter of fact, local police, the only one defunding it, his budget calls for a $400 million cut in local law enforcement assistance. They need more assistance. They need, when they show up for a 9/11 call, to have someone with them as a psychologist or psychiatrist to keep them from having to use force and be able to talk people down.
Now that's the truest shit right there.
Like we had before, where the officers get to know the people in the communities. That's what crime went down.
Motherfuckers been saying that shit for years.
It went down. And so we have to be...
That's not what they're talking about, Chris. That's not what
that is not true.
He doesn't have any law for support. He has no law enforcement.
That's not true.
Almost.
That's not... Look,
all right, who do you have? Name one group that supports you. Name one group group that came out and supported you.
Look.
Go ahead.
Look.
Time.
I don't have time to do anything.
Ah!
Name one law enforcement group.
Gentlemen, I think I'm going to take back the moderator's role, and I want to get to another subject, which is the issue of protests in many cities that have turned violent. In Portland, Oregon, especially, we had more than 100 straight days of protests, which I think you could agree. You talk about peaceful protests, many of those turned into riots. The Vice President, you say that people who commit crimes should be held accountable. The question I have, though, is, as the Democratic nominee, and earlier tonight you said that you are the Democratic Party right now, have you ever called the Democratic mayor of Portland or the Democratic governor of Oregon and said, hey, you've got to stop this, bring in the National Guard, do whatever it takes, but you'd stop the days and months of violence in Portland?
I don't hold public office now. I am a former vice president. I've made it clear in my public statements that the violence shouldn't be prosecuted. It should be prosecuted. Anyone who commits it
But
should
you've
be
never called
prosecuted.
for the people, excuse me, sir, you have never called for the leaders in Portland and in Oregon to call and bring in the National Guard and knock off 100 days of riots.
They can, in fact, take care of it if you just stay out of the way. Look here.
Oh, really?
Here.
Oh, really?
Yes,
Look. He's struggling to answer that question.
A young man in the middle of the street, they shot him. And for 3 days,
President Trump,
Portland wouldn't do anything. They had something to the U.S. Marshals, and they took care of business.
go ahead, sir.
And by the way, his own former spokesperson said, riots and chaos and violence help us cause. That's what this is all about.
I don't know who said that.
I do. Who? I think Kellyanne Conway.
I don't think she said
She said that. And so here's the point. The point is that that's what he just keeps trying to rile everything up. He doesn't want to calm things down. Instead of going in and talking to people and saying, let's get everybody together, figure out how to deal with this. What's he do?